Imagine 9 experienced people, veteran climbers ... fleeing their tent in the middle of the Siberian night, cutting through the canvas from the inside, emerging half-naked to certain death in the -40-degree cold. What could be so terrifying that rational people would choose to freeze to death rather than face whatever was inside that tent? Welcome to the most disturbing and inexplicable case in modern history. I'm from the channel Paranormal Crime Stories, and today you will discover why the Dyatlov Pass Incident still haunts investigators 65 years later. February 1959, Soviet Union, Ural Mountains. Igor Dyatlov was only 23 years old, but he was already considered one of the most experienced climbers at his university. When he organized an expedition to Mount Otorten, no one suspected it would be the last time they would see him alive. Or 10. In the local language, it means don't go there. An ancient warning that should have been taken more seriously. The group was made up of the best. 9 veteran climbers, not amateurs playing in the snow. These were people who knew every secret, every danger of winter Russian mountains. Igor Dyatlov, Zinaida Kolmogorova, Lyudmila Dubinina, Alexander Kolevatov, Rustin Slobodin, Yuri Doroshenko, Yuri Krivonishenko, Nikolai Thibeaux-Brignoles, and Semyon Zolotaryov. 9 names that would become synonymous with the inexplicable. For the first few days, everything went perfectly. Photographs later found show a happy group, playing in the snow, setting up camp, and following all safety protocols. Dyatlov was meticulous. He kept a detailed diary of every moment of the journey. Guys, if you're enjoying this dive into the dark side of history, leave a like below. It really helps me keep bringing you these disturbing cases. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because we have many more sinister mysteries ahead. February 1st, 1959, Dyatlov's last diary. Entry read, "It's hard to imagine such terrible wind and snow conditions. We decided to pitch the tent right here on the slope. At least we'll have a good story to tell when we get back." They never came back. When the group failed to return on schedule, Soviet authorities organized one of the largest search operations in history. What they found on February 26th would forever change the lives of all the investigators involved. The tent was cut open, but not from the outside, as would be expected in an attack. The people inside had used their own knives to rip the canvas from the inside out. They fled in absolute panic into the deadly cold of the Siberian night. Imagine the desperation, the terror. That would make experienced people abandon all their survival gear and run, half-naked to certain death. The first macabre discovery, Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonishenko were found near a makeshift campfire. They were wearing only underwear. They died of hypothermia, but there was something disturbing. Their hands were severely burned, as if they had held something extremely hot or radioactive. Igor Dyatlov, Zinaida Kolmogorova, and Rustin Slobodin were found on the slope in positions suggesting a desperate attempt to return to the tent. Slobodin had a fractured skull, but there was no blood and no external signs of trauma. How does one fracture a skull without blood, without external marks? But the remaining 4 bodies, discovered 2 months later, buried under 4 meters of snow, is where this story becomes truly terrifying. Lyudmila Dubinina, 20 years old, tongue and eyes removed with surgical precision. Multiple rib fractures. Alexander Kolevatov, no eyes, severe facial injuries, but no signs of a struggle. Nikolai Thibeaux-Brignoles, fractured skull, no external injuries. Semyon Zolotaryov, multiple rib fractures, but still had his camera hanging around his neck. What force, what entity, is capable of causing devastating internal fractures without leaving a single external mark? Guys, I know this sounds scary, but it's just the beginning. Let me know in the comments if you've heard of this case before. The story gets even more sinister. The official Soviet investigation lasted only 3 weeks. 3 weeks for a case of this magnitude. The official conclusion was surreal. An unknown, irresistible natural force caused the deaths. But what natural? Force removed eyes and tongues with surgical precision? The details the government tried to suppress are even more disturbing. High levels of radiation were detected on the victim's clothing. Other expeditions in the region reported strange lights in the sky that same night. The victim's skin had an abnormal orange hue, and some had premature gray hair. The area was cordoned off for 3 years after the incident. Why? Lead investigator Lev Ivanov revealed decades later that he was forced to close the case by superior orders. He admitted seeing spheres of light in the region and that there were forces we cannot explain involved. When this mystery reached the United States, theories multiplied exponentially. TV documentaries, books, and films transformed the Russian case into an American pop culture phenomenon. But do these Americanized versions get closer to the truth? Or do they merely sensationalize this mystery even further? The first theory to gain traction in the West was alien abduction. The lights in the sky, the radiation, the unexplained injuries, the precise removal of organs all fit perfectly into the American UFO narrative of the 1960s and 1970s. Other expeditions reported unidentified lights in the region. The radiation levels were inexplicable for the time. The wounds appeared surgical, almost alien. But there was another, even more sinister theory. During the Cold War, any Soviet mystery automatically became suspicious of military involvement. The Americans speculated about secret nuclear weapons tests, experiments with sound waves capable of causing panic, chemical or biological weapons, and military rocket tests. And then came the most terrifying interpretation, popularized by American horror films: supernatural forces, ancestral spirits of the indigenous Mansi people, demonic forces in the mountains, dimensional portals, interdimensional creatures. Which of these theories makes the most sense to you? Leave your opinion in the comments. And if you're enjoying this content, turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our latest mysteries. What's fascinating about the Americanization of the Dyatlov case is how it transformed from a genuine mystery into a product of entertainment. Each American theory adds elements that didn't exist in the original case. Descriptions of spacecraft, never mentioned in the original reports. Theories about underground military bases with no evidence. Connections to other American UFO cases. Dramatizations that invent dialogue and situations. But before we get to the modern theories, I need to tell you about the more sinister details that were uncovered during the original investigation. Details that were deliberately omitted from public reports for decades. When investigators arrived at the scene, they found footprints leading from the tent. Footprints that led to where the first bodies were found. But here's the chilling detail. The footprints showed that some people were barefoot, others in socks, and others with only one shoe. Imagine the scene. People running desperately in the snow, losing their shoes along the way, but still running. Even more disturbing, the footprints showed no signs of panicked running. They were organized in single file, as if the 9 people had left the tent in a coordinated fashion, almost as if they were being guided or commanded by something. Investigators also discovered that the fire pit where the first 2 bodies were found had been made with branches ripped from a tree 5 meters above the ground. How could people with severe hypothermia climb a tree and rip off branches at such a height? And why did they climb the tree? What were they trying to see? Or what were they hiding from? Another macabre detail. When the 4 bodies were found in the ravine, they were arranged in a very strange way. Ludmila Dubinina was kneeling, her hands raised as if protecting herself from something coming from above. Semyon Zolotaryov was, hugging her as if trying to protect her. The other two were curled up together in a position that suggested absolute terror. The clothing found on the bodies in the ravine also revealed something disturbing. Some items belonged to people who had died first near the campfire. This means the four in the ravine had removed clothing from the bodies of their dead companions before they died. But if they had access to the bodies, why didn't they return to the tent for more equipment? Semyon Zolotaryov's camera was developed decades later. Of the 36 photographs, only a few were visible. Most were damaged by water and time, but those that could be recovered showed ... lights, strange lights in the night sky, orbs of light that shouldn't be there. There's also the mystery of the specific injuries. Ludmila's tongue wasn't violently ripped out. It was removed precisely, without damaging the surrounding tissue. Alexander Kolevatov's eyes were also removed, without damaging the eyelids. What kind of natural force, what kind of animal, what kind of phenomenon does this? But the most chilling detail of all, when the bodies were found, some still had food in their mouths. Food they were chewing at the time of death. This means they died instantly, without time to swallow. What force could cause sudden death in 4 people at the same time, buried under meters of snow? The original researchers reported that the snow around the bodies had an orange tint, almost as if it had been burned or irradiated. When they tested the snow, they found anomalous levels of radioactivity, but also something even stranger. The snow didn't normally melt. It remained solid even in temperatures above freezing. During the investigation, 3 members of the rescue team fell ill with symptoms similar to radiation poisoning: nausea, hair loss, and skin rashes. They were immediately removed from the area and treated in strict secrecy. Their names have never been released publicly. Now imagine the whole scene. 9 experienced people emerge from their tent in an orderly fashion. In the middle of a Siberian blizzard, half naked, walk almost 2 kilometers in the snow. Some climb trees, make a fire. 4 of them take clothes from the dead and hide in a ravine where they die instantly from devastating internal injuries. While an unknown substance turns the snow orange and radioactive, what rational explanation can account for all these details? What if I told you that modern investigators may have uncovered the real truth behind this mystery? A truth more terrifying than any conspiracy theory? In 2019, 60 years after the incident, Russian investigators officially reopened the case. Using modern technology and new forensic analysis, they reached a conclusion that may explain everything, but is equally chilling. The Katabatic avalanche theory. Extremely strong winds created abnormal atmospheric pressure in the region. This generated infrasound, sound frequencies below human hearing. Infrasound causes irrational panic, disorientation, and self-destructive behavior in humans. The extreme pressure can cause devastating internal injuries without leaving any external scars. Computer simulations confirmed conditions for katabatic winds that night. Medical studies explain the effects of infrasound on human behavior. Analysis of the snow and topography supports the atmospheric pressure theory. The injuries are consistent with pressure trauma, not external force. But one element remains completely unexplained: the radioactivity detected on the victim's clothing. Modern analyses have revealed the presence of radioactive elements not naturally occurring in the region. Higher concentrations were found in the clothing of some specific victims. The contamination pattern is inconsistent with natural sources. Where did this radiation come from? Some worked at nuclear facilities and may have had prior exposure. Contamination may have occurred during the transport of the bodies. Remote military. Tests may have left residue in the area, or the measuring equipment at the time was faulty. But what if none of these explanations are true? One aspect often overlooked in Americanized versions is the accounts of local witnesses. In February 1959, another group of expeditioners was in the region. They reported orange orbs of light in the sky for several nights. Strange sounds coming from the direction of Mount Utorten. Abnormal behavior of the local fauna, with birds fleeing the area. The indigenous Mansi people considered the mountain sacred and avoided the area in winter. They reported angry spirits and the lights of the dead. They refused to participate in the initial searches out of fear. Decades later, Soviet pilots admitted to conducting missile test flights in the region during that period. They were ordered not to disclose their flight paths. There was a possible connection to the Soviet space program. Why was the case so quickly covered up by Soviet authorities? The real reasons may be simpler than any conspiracy theory. To avoid public panic about mountain safety, to protect the Soviet space program, to avoid admitting incompetence in the investigation, and to preserve the image of total state control. Cold War paranoia transformed a typical bureaucratic cover-up into evidence of an international conspiracy. Does this story give you the creeps? Share your most likely theory in the comments. And don't forget to like this video if you're enjoying this dive into the dark side of history. Examinations of the bodies conducted between 2019 and 2020 using new pathological analysis and modern technology, 3D reconstruction of the wounds, and advanced toxicological analysis revealed surprising results. Wounds consistent with a delayed avalanche. Signs of hypothermia in all bodies. Absence of toxic substances in the blood. Injury patterns consistent with extreme pressure. Regarding radiation, independent analyses in 2021 confirmed levels within normal limits for the time. Possible contamination from faulty measuring equipment. No evidence of exposure to nuclear material. But then, if modern science can explain almost everything, why does this case still haunt us? Because there are details that no scientific theory can fully explain. Details that have only recently been discovered and that make this mystery even deeper. In 2020, independent researchers gained access to Soviet archives that had been classified for over 60 years. What they found there changed everything we knew about the case. First, in the week before the incident, 3 other expeditions in the region reported sightings of unidentified flying objects. Not just lights in the sky, but solid, metallic, disc-shaped objects. These reports were immediately classified as state secrets. Second, Soviet military installations in the region detected significant electromagnetic anomalies on the night of the incident. Radar equipment failed simultaneously. Radio communications were interrupted. Compasses spun wildly. Third, modern geological analyses have revealed that the site where the bodies were found sits directly on one of Russia's largest natural uranium reserves, uranium that may have been secretly mined for the Soviet nuclear program. Fourth, Soviet weather records from that night were altered. Actual weather conditions were very different from those reported in official reports. In fact, there was no storm that night. The sky was clear, with perfect visibility. Fifth, at least 6 people involved in the original investigation died mysteriously. In the following years, car accidents, sudden heart attacks, unexplained suicides. All deaths raised suspicions, but were never properly investigated. And most disturbing of all, in 2021, a new examination of the bodies using state-of-the-art technology revealed something that had gone unnoticed for decades. All 9 bodies contained traces of an unknown substance in their bloodstreams. A substance that did not exist in nature in 1959. This substance has properties that challenge our current understanding of chemistry. It appears to interact with the nervous system in a unique way, causing extreme disorientation, irrational panic, and in high concentrations, instantaneous paralysis of vital organs. But where did this substance come from? How did it enter the bloodstreams of 9 people at the same time? And why was it only detected now, 60 years later? Some scientists speculate that it may have been a military experiment gone wrong. Others suggest exposure to some unknown type of radiation. But there's a third possibility that no one wants to discuss openly. The substance may have a non-terrestrial origin. Spectroscopic analyses show that its molecular composition does not correspond to any known element in the periodic table. Its atomic structure suggests technology far beyond what existed in 1959, or even today. Are you noticing how this mystery gets deeper and deeper with each new discovery? But there's one final detail that may be the most important of all. In 2022, high-resolution satellites detected an anomaly in the ground, exactly where Dyatlov's tent was pitched. A circular anomaly, approximately 10 meters in diameter, where vegetation simply doesn't grow. Even after 60 years, nothing grows in that spot. Soil analyses revealed extreme levels of radiation, but not uranium or plutonium. It's a type of radiation never before cataloged by modern science. It appears to affect the very DNA of plants, preventing any kind of growth. What could have caused a permanent mark on the ground that lasts for 60 years? What kind of event could leave a radioactive scar that defies scientific explanation? Recently, American researchers using penetrating radar technology discovered something even more disturbing beneath that barren circle. A regularly shaped underground cavity, almost as if something had been buried there. Something large. Something metallic. Russian authorities immediately blocked any excavation attempts, citing national security risks. But why prevent excavations at a site where a supposed natural disaster occurred? Perhaps because they know that what is buried there could rewrite our understanding of what really happened that February night in 1950-9. And maybe some secrets are better left buried. The truth is that despite all the scientific, American, conspiracy, and supernatural theories, the Dyatlov Pass Incident remains one of the most disturbing mysteries in modern history. 9 experienced mountaineers died inexplicably on a mountain. The locals called, "Don't go there." And perhaps this ancient warning should have been taken more seriously. What began as a Russian tragedy has become a global cultural phenomenon. More than 50 documentaries and films about the case have been produced. Hundreds of books and speculative articles have been published. It has influenced games, TV series, and podcasts. Paranormal tourism has also flourished in the region. But in the end, 9 young people lost their lives in brutal and mysterious ways. They deserve to be remembered not just as characters in a mystery, but as real people who faced something so terrifying that they chose to freeze to death rather than remain in their tent. Perhaps we will never know what truly happened that fateful night on Mount Otorten. Perhaps some mysteries must remain unsolved. Perhaps there are forces in this world that our rational minds cannot comprehend. One thing is certain: the Dyatlov Pass Incident will continue to haunt our imaginations, reminding us that not everything in this world can be explained by science or logic. Sometimes the unknown remains unknown. And maybe it's better that way. If you've made it this far, leave a comment telling us which part of this story struck you most. Do you believe in modern scientific theories? Or do you think there's something more sinister behind this mystery? Like this video if you enjoyed this dive into the dark side of history. Subscribe to the channel for more disturbing stories like this. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our mysteries. And remember, reality is sometimes far scarier than any fiction. Sometimes the deepest mysteries are hidden right beneath our feet, waiting to be discovered. Sometimes the truth is so disturbing that governments prefer to keep it secret for decades. Dyatlov Pass Incident reminds us that our world still holds secrets that defy our understanding. That there are forces and phenomena that our current science cannot explain. That sometimes, when someone warns us not to go there, perhaps we should listen. 9 brave young men lost their lives on that cursed mountain. They became part of a mystery that transcends generations, cultures, and borders. Their deaths may have revealed something about our world that we were perhaps not ready to know. But one thing is certain: as long as that circular mark on the ground remains barren, as long as that metal cavity remains buried, as long as governments continue to classify documents on the case, the mystery of Dyatlov Pass will continue to haunt our imagination. And who knows, maybe one day someone will be brave enough to excavate that site and discover what's truly buried there. Perhaps one day we'll know whether those 9 climbers died because of an unknown natural force, a military experiment gone wrong, or something far more sinister from beyond the stars. Until then, all we can do is keep looking for answers, keep questioning the official versions, and never forget that there are mysteries in this world that are stranger than any fiction we can imagine. Until the next mystery, everyone, and remember, some mountains have their secrets for a reason.